St. Petersburg is the second largest city in the Tampa area. Today we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons of living in St. Petersburg. I'm Sam, and this is the Living in Tampa channel, where we talk about the entire Tampa area, what it's like to live here, move here, all that kind of stuff. We're also a team of realtors here in the area, and we would love a chance to earn your real estate business. Give us a call, text, or email anytime. Right now, I'm in Crescent Lake Park. You see where it is right here on the north side of St. Petersburg. I think of this as the north side of St. Petersburg because it's where you start to get into a more typical St. Pete neighborhood. The next video after this will be about this neighborhood, the Crescent Lakes and Crescent Heights area, just kind of what it's like to be around here, kind of show what the houses are like, the park, the streets, all that kind of stuff. But today, let's just talk about some pros and cons of living in St. Petersburg. And let's start with the pros. Now, people often choose St. Petersburg because it's not Tampa, but it's nice that it's still close to Tampa. So pro number one is that St. Petersburg is close to Tampa. You have a couple bridges, easily can get you across the bay over to Tampa to get to the airport, to get to downtown, to get to a hockey game, to get to other malls or whatever you need to get to over there. Super easy access, even though if you're choosing St. Petersburg, you're probably choosing it because you don't want to be in Tampa, and a lot of times people that live here in St. Petersburg, it's hard to get them to go across the bay. Okay, pro number two, St. Petersburg is super close to beaches. Of course, there's St. Pete Beach, just west of here, but then all kinds of beautiful, beautiful beaches as you go north and south of St. Pete Beach. And a lot of you are considering moving here or are planning on moving here because of the weather, because of the beaches. And in St. Petersburg, you're super close to them. As many of you know, I lived in Colorado for 10 years, and in Colorado, they like to talk about how much sunshine they get, especially in Denver. They want to say they're the sunniest place in the world. But St. Petersburg is actually the place that holds the record for most days of sunshine in a year. I don't know why that really matters. The point is, if you're moving here for the lifestyle, you're close to the beaches, you're beautiful weather all around, this is your spot. All right, pro number three is jobs. And let me explain this a little bit. So somebody came up to our house today, and we live about an hour north of here. Still very much in the Tampa area, but an hour north of where I am right now. And when this person was driving up to our house, this person arrived at our house and said, whoa, the traffic's not bad at all in the morning when commuters are going the opposite way. And that's the thing, commuters come down to this south side of the county, to Tampa and St. Pete, because this is the job center of the area. So St. Pete has a lot of different job offerings. Also, there's a lot of military contractors here. I didn't realize that until I had a lot of clients that moved here to work for those military contractors. There's all kinds of different jobs here in St. Pete. And that pushes us right into number four as well. In St. Pete, there's quite a bit more tech jobs than other places in Florida. And one of the main reasons I know this is because my brother-in-law works for tech companies. He was in Manhattan for 10 years and moved down here around the same time I did in 2020, and has a lot of friends that he knew from Manhattan or from college that work for tech companies here in St. Pete, or that have started tech companies in St. Pete. Of course, not at as big of a scale as New York or San Francisco or DC or Austin or wherever, but for Florida, St. Pete has a little tech job hub and just a tech job community. So if you're looking for that kind of startup founder kind of community, you get a lot of that in St. Pete compared to other areas. Now, it's still not a lot, still not a huge community, but it is here. Okay, pro number four is that the average age in St. Petersburg is declining. So you can look at it over the years, and St. Petersburg developed this reputation as being just a retiree hotspot. But the average age has gone down and down and down over the years. And that is a very good thing from a jobs perspective, from a taxpayer perspective, from a city operations perspective. When your average resident age is declining, they're likely to have kids that are taxpayers, or all these. I mean, if you think of it as a business, your customer base is growing, and the amount that those citizens contribute to the community in terms of tax dollars and in terms of just engagement grows whenever the average age is younger, because they live longer. Now, there's still a lot of retiree spots here, and it's a great spot for retirees, awesome spot for retirees. but the average age is declining really, really rapidly. And that means all kinds of things. It means the schools improve. It means there's more, parks and amenities for families. There's all kinds of things that come along with that. All right, pro number 6 is property values increasing. I'm actually currently selling my first house that I bought in Florida, which is not very close to here, but it has appreciated about 25% per year. That's pretty wild. So after 3 years, it's up a lot. But St. Pete appreciation has been even higher. Rents have increased, home values have increased. So if you bought a house here 5 years ago, you have so much equity built into that house now that you could sell and buy something else, that you could refinance and cash out, that you could leverage into starting a business. All kinds of things that you can do with property equity. And St. Pete properties are continuing to appreciate at an unprecedented pace. Do I think it will crash? No. Do I think it will soften? Yes, it already has softened. But land here is so finite because this area is surrounded by water, because it's surrounded by other towns. Land is just finite. We can't create more of it, so properties are gonna keep going up for sure. Okay, the final pro here is the downtown. St. Petersburg has a super cool downtown. And it's not just Beach Drive right there by the pier, the awesome pier with great restaurants right along there, but then Central Avenue that runs east and west that really divides the downtown. And there's, the Sunrunner bus goes all the way down Central Avenue from downtown to St. Pete Beach, super cool, but it has made Central Avenue into even more of a destination. Great local food, drinks, everything all along Central Avenue, and just a super cool vibe. New condos going in down there, new offices being built all along Central Avenue. So it's not just that main Bayside area of St. Pete, but the rest of the downtown as it extends toward the beaches is super cool. All right, let's get into the cons. Con number 1, this area is pretty congested. Obviously, I say it all the time. This is the most densely populated county in the state, but then St. Pete is in the midst of all that, surrounded by water on one side, surrounded by other densely populated areas on the other side, and being about 250,000 people, they're packed in here pretty tight. Thankfully, it hasn't built up too much. You don't have a lot of skyscrapers. Obviously, there are some, taller condo buildings and apartment buildings, but there's still a lot of single-family homes and a lot of neighborhoods. People in St. Pete love their neighborhoods, but they're still all packed in pretty tight. Okay, con number 2 is everything is old. So maybe you like old houses, maybe you like old brick roads, but I don't think you like old power lines or, deterioration when buildings start to fall apart, things like that. And that is a thing that is constantly being dealt with in St. Petersburg. And of course, those things will get restored or torn down and rebuilt. Power lines will get buried eventually, like they're working on doing in South Tampa over the next few years. But all those things just take time and tax money, and they cause issues in them while they're being done, right? Okay, con number 3 is St. Petersburg is very flood prone. Now, there are plenty of areas that don't require flood insurance. There are plenty of areas that do. We actually just closed on a house for a client. I talked about this house in a previous video. The flood insurance was about $200 a month, which is not too bad for down here. And it was in the Shore Acres area. But a lot of the water around these houses, not lakes, but the bay and then all the little canals that come into town all around, are very influenced by tides. So when you have a storm and then the tide is higher and then it comes up, blah, blah, blah. But then also just storm water systems. When you have older neighborhoods like Crescent Lake or like the Old Northeast, that whole kind of section of town, or down in Pink Streets, all these neighborhoods were built without considering stormwater in the way we do now, and without thinking that there would be this many homes and this many residents in the area that would impact all these things. And stormwater is gonna pool up. That could potentially cause problems to your property. So it's not just hurricanes, it could be stormwater, it could be all kinds of things. And St. Petersburg just in general is pretty low and is also surrounded by water. Con number 4, as we talked about before with jobs, people come down into this area quite a bit. You're gonna have constant commuters in and out, coming down here for work. And when you live somewhere, that stands out. It stands out to me if somebody's commuting through my neighborhood, or just commuting through the general area where I live when that traffic kind of picks up at certain times of the day. That's definitely gonna be something you would experience here in St. Petersburg. And just like a lot of areas in Florida, in St. Petersburg, you're gonna have constant tourism influx. So big seasons, you know, people come down here and live for some of the winter, call those snowbirds. I think they should be called sunbirds because they're actually like following the sun. They're running away from the snow. Anyway, not my opportunity to define that. So a lot of snowbirds in this area, but then also just people coming to visit the beach, people coming to visit St. Petersburg. It's a cool old town, one of the oldest towns here on the Gulf Coast. Overall, it's an awesome place to visit and people are going to be constantly coming in and out. All right, con number 6, there is a significant lack of families here in the St. Petersburg area. There's quite a bit of families, but compared to the suburbs, compared to other areas where it's a little more open and a little quieter, St. Petersburg is really different in that way. You've got a lot of families without kids, you've got a lot of older couples, you've got a lot of really young, and there just tends to be less of a family vibe throughout the whole area. Okay, and the final con number 7. I don't know if I've ever done lists of 7, but here they are. Con number 7 is subpar schools. Just like there's a lack of families, there's not enough families to put pressure on the schools to get a lot better. There are some great schools, you know, some of the fundamental schools, some of the charter schools, some of the private schools, like, you know, Shorecrest. Even over in like Jungle Terrace, I know there's a really good high school over there. But in general, the schools for this big of an area are pretty subpar. If you're moving here and you're thinking, I want to be close to good public schools, this ends up not being a place that most people consider. There are some options, but then you might have a good elementary school, but then not a great middle school, not a great high school, or you might have to go private for high school. All of those kind of things are factors when you live here, when you're looking at a place to move. And if you are looking at a place to move and you're considering St. Petersburg, we want to hear from you. Our phone number and email are right there on the screen and in the description down below. Thanks for coming by.